The opening scene reveals the busy office environment belonging to Tyler's father, Mr. Hutton. Martha receives a call intended for Tyler. She puts Tyler's dad on hold and requests to pass the line to his son. Upon getting inside his office, she finds him sitting on the floor with his computer in his hands. Tyler asks her to come check out the details of the divorce papers he just received. His wife, Megan, gets to keep the business, the nice car, and even the cat. There are times in life when you don't even know how to react to certain things, and that's the point where Tyler is at the moment. He is faced with a divorce costing him more than he expects. It is absolutely not in the plan. One of the employees notifies Tyler that his father is waiting for him. They quickly get up and head out of his office. Tyler walks into his father's office, and Mr. Hutton dismisses the staff who have come to seek his opinion on some new designs. Mr. Hutton informs him that he can't fly at the moment, so he wants his son to fly to Milan to check on the new spring lines. He further informs Tyler that Martha has his travel arrangements and he will be leaving the next day. This is a good way to instill seriousness in a son who is not interested in the family business. His son isn't interested in the trip and suggests that someone else go on his behalf, but his father refuses to replace him. He reminds Tyler that he needs to learn how to run the company by himself. Hutton rubs Tyler's mistakes on his face, especially when he is chasing his dreams, which has landed him in a messy, expensive divorce case. Tyler decides to let his old man have his way. After all, he's got nothing to lose in traveling to Milan anyway. Tyler arrives in Milan in the evening. Paolo accompanies him around town, and they stop by a restaurant to have dinner. Mr. Hugo Galante joins them on the table, and the two men begin talking about Tyler's father and his willingness to embrace new technologies. Tyler changes the subject of discussion because it seems they are about to make his father the center of the conversation. Meanwhile, a strange man is sitting a few tables away from them observing Tyler. Later that evening, all three of them exit the restaurant with Tyler heavily drunk. Hugo and Paolo support him to prevent him from falling. He asks them to let him go, assuring them that he can find his way. Hugo and Paolo gossip among themselves, saying Tyler only has his father's looks, but not his brains. Suddenly, some unknown men grab him and force him into their vehicle. Tyler soon discovers that he has been kidnapped and they intend to ask his father for ransom. What's more interesting is that the kidnappers lose their way, and their GPS doesn't work due to the heavy downpour. In the course of searching for a place to spend the night, they drive through the rain until they eventually stumble into a village named Piano. They end up in an old and strange house that is sealed with threads and nails in a rather strange way. The leader of the group instructs the two other men to get everything out of the car, since they will be staying the night in the abandoned building. Isn't this how most horror movies begin? The following morning, a local passes by and sees a vehicle in front of the abandoned building. She curiously tries to find out who had parked the vehicle there until her eyes fall on the door with the loose threads on it. She becomes somewhat frightened and makes a sign of the cross before running away. Looks like fighting off a ghost isn't on her to-do list for the day. The kidnappers soon wake up, and one of them, Aldo, walks over to the balcony trying to get some reception on his phone. His cry of frustration catches the attention of a woman by the waterside, and in shock, she stares at him with a mixture of disbelief and fear in her eyes. Meanwhile, the kidnapper mistakes the expression as one for love. The woman abandons the clothes she's washing and quickly grabs her mule, hurrying as she goes. At the same time, Aldo chases after her, professing love, believing she's the woman of his dreams. It's quite a How I Met Your Mother moment. Minutes after the first guy runs off, the second kidnapper, Bambo, comes out with his toothbrush in his hand. He sees a shirtless guy riding a horse. Something takes over him as he instantly begins to smile in the weirdest manner ever. A minute later, he's down the path chasing after the guy on the horse. The third kidnapper, by the name of Seto, wakes up with an upset stomach. He holds his belly with one hand and runs around in search of a restroom. He finally finds one, and in the process of trying to open the door, the sound of a cow mooing catches his attention. He turns towards the cow's direction, and once again, he has that strange, enchanted look on his face. Then, he begins to talk to the cow. Another man down. With all three of them gone, Tyler struggles to free himself since his hands have been tied and his face is covered with a cloth to prevent him from seeing his surroundings. He somehow struggles till he gets to the balcony and accidentally falls over into a local carriage meant for transporting items. The carriage wheels him down the valley until he bumps into a young lady named Rosalia Drago, passing by with her goat and wagon. In annoyance, she pulls the cloth off his face and slaps him for tormenting her so early in the morning. Tyler, on the other hand, looks into her face and becomes lost in her beauty, like someone under a spell. She pulls out a small knife and threatens him, demanding he leave her alone. She decides to do him a favor by cutting him loose before continuing on her way. Tyler repeatedly calls out to her, begging for her not to leave him like the others. He also professes love to her. Cupid is surely working overtime. At the Hutton office, Martha informs Mr. Hutton that she received a call from Milan. Tyler missed his morning meeting and he never checked into the hotel even though his bags were there. Mr. Hutton believes Tyler must be playing some kind of game on them. He asks Martha to give it a day before worrying over it. Aldo, one of the kidnappers, tracks the lady down to where she's letting her mule drink water. He hides behind a building, watching her and smiling. Unbeknownst to him, the women of the house have arrived. They launch at him with their brooms, striking him until he runs away. Seto finds his way to the cow's shed. He leaves the entrance open while attempting to feed the cow some hay. The mayor looks through the window and sees his cow leaving. He quickly grabs his gun and comes out of the house aiming at Bambo. He shoots the gun upwards and chases him out of his property. So far, the kidnappers don't seem to be qualified for their job. Bambo follows the horse rider named Rocco until they arrive at the spot where he and his crew are chopping some wood in the forest. He carefully observes and then takes off his singlet. He starts breaking some branches on the floor until he gets their attention. Later, all four of them meet up somewhere inside the village, and they explain to each other that they are chasing after their newfound muses. They suggest going elsewhere to talk about it instead of standing on what looks like a road. As they take leave, the lady whom Tyler bumped into earlier opens her curtain slightly and watches them quietly for some minutes. Bambo reminds them that the guy who had sent them, Don Rossi, will end them if he doesn't get his ransom soon, unless, of course, he does not find them. He states how he is not ready to leave this world just yet. Aldo likes the last thing he just said, so he quickly calls for a vote and all of them excitedly vote to stay back in the village. Later that evening, they visit a local joint run by Tyler's crush. She looks at them with what looks like pity and disdain. She shakes her head and asks them to sit where they can. The mayor and a few other locals question their identity. Their alibi of being in a travel club just confuses the people around them. Later, they feast on the meal served to them. Rosalia gives them some drinks and questions why they are planning to stay for a while. The men reveal they are willing to work in the village and some locals even offer them some jobs they can do. However, their joy is short-lived as the mayor informs them that they will need to obtain a work permit from him, which might take them a month or two to process. Very early the next morning, all four of them drive over to the mayor's house wearing sunglasses. He welcomes them in, but reminds them that he cannot do anything about the period it will take for them to get work permits. The men come up with an idea to grease the pan, so to speak. Whatever they came up with, it worked, because the mayor let them have their requests. Bambo gets the opportunity to work alongside his crush. He attempts to impress him by carrying huge stacks of hay, which ends up falling on him. Aldo also gets what he wants as he begins working in the field with Fidelia, the woman of his dreams, as he likes to call her. Also, Seto gets his desire fulfilled. He tracks his beloved cow to the open field where it's grazing. He spots a giant bull behind his cow. For fear of what the bull can do to him, he turns around and takes his leave, feeling very annoyed. Tyler has nothing he can do. So, just as he requested, he was granted the privilege to wash the dishes for Rosalia. Later that day, the mayor brings his cow named Nuta to Seto so he can take care of her. He realizes that the cow trusts Seto to give her some water, so he informs him that he will milk Nuta tomorrow. Seto can't believe he will have the opportunity to milk his beloved Nuta. At the office, Martha is surprised to see her boss in the office very early in the morning. Hutton informs her that he never left, because he got bad news that Tyler has been kidnapped and he needs to send money or else his son will be murdered. Back in Piano, Tyler and his new friends are having a splendid time swimming by the fountain. Rocco and Fidelia seem to have taken an interest in them as they spy on the men from inside some bushes, while Rosalia, who is passing by, simply shakes her head and continues on her way. At the close of work that night, Rosalia thanks Tyler, who decides to confess his feelings for her. She takes his hand and opens his palm wide enough, and then uses it to slap his cheek, before sending him out as she bids him goodnight. He gets back to the house, and while spending time with Aldo and Seto, he requests to know how much Don placed on him as ransom. To his surprise, he is worth just €500,000. Bambo shuts Seto up to answer Tyler's question. He reminds them that they all want to stay in the village, so there is no point talking about the ransom. At her residence, Rosalia seeks Nuna's opinion about the odd American guy. In reference to Tyler, Nuna reveals that she's sure Tyler is under a spell because she can feel it whenever he passes by her. She assures Rosalia that a spell is nothing to joke about. She believes she must protect her heart, since she may never be able to find out if Tyler's love is true. Very early the following morning, Tyler steps out of the house, intending to go make things right with Rosalia. The kidnappers watch him and discuss among themselves to keep an eye on him before he does something stupid. Tyler arrives at the house and finds Nuna, who informs him that Rosalia has gone out to get some firewood. She shows him a picture of little Rosalia and complains about her unwillingness to move to the city. Rosa doesn't want to leave her all by herself in Piano. Nuna hurries outside upon hearing the mayor's car honking. She gives the mayor a list of items she would want him to get for her on his way back from the big city. Tyler approaches the car and requests to go with the mayor so he can pick up some supplies from the city. Hours later, while they are in the city, Tyler utilizes the opportunity to send an email to his father. At the village, Seto arrives with a bucket and a stool ready for his big date with Nuta. Meanwhile, Bambo is at work with his crush, Rocco. As they drag the huge saw back and forth on a log, Bambo reveals to Rocco that he and his friends think they are under a spell. He seeks Rocco's opinion on the possibility of them being under a spell called Sarbalai. He thinks there is a possibility that without it, they won't be attracted to each other. Rocco informs him that it's up to him to decide, because he believes each man must know his own heart's desires. Just outside the house they are living in, Nuna finds Aldo's phone vibrating. She picks up the call, and Don's voice goes through the speakers. He passes information to Nuna, thinking Aldo must have caught a cold. That's why his voice sounds off. After the call, Don suspects something must be wrong because usually, he cannot get Aldo to shut his mouth. He asks one of his boys to get the coordinates of Aldo's phone. At night, Tyler comes to meet Rosalia inside the house and works on some stuff on paper. He excitedly shows her the presents he purchased for her and a few for Nuna, but she does not respond to him. This makes him wonder if she is mad at him. Still not getting any response, he packs up his things and bids her goodnight. Over at the house, Bambo is writing another poem for Rocco when Tyler comes back with an olive oil for him, a cologne for Aldo, and some hand cream for Seto, who looks awfully down. Aldo apologizes to him for wrongly thinking he might leave the village and never return. The next day at the stable, Bambo comes bearing some flowers. He gives it to Rocco, who accepts it and takes him on a horse ride. Fidelia wakes up to Aldo's phone vibrating again. She picks up the call, and Don threatens to find her and deal with her. She feels like he is being rude to her, so she takes off her shoe and uses it to smash the phone while Don is still issuing threats. The mayor passes Rocco and Bambo on his way to town while they are cycling to see Rocco's father. They inform Rocco's dad of their relationship, and the man laughs and informs them that he used to be so inseparable from his brother, just like they are until the day his brother stole his lady friend. Rocco grips Bambo's hands tightly, threatening to sniff life out of his brother should he betray him. Bambo promises not to let any lady friend come between himself and Rocco, if it will make his father feel better. The next day, Don wakes Mr. Hutton up with a phone call. He requests to have the ransom paid to him just like they arranged, but Hutton is confused because his son's email was very detailed. Turns out he sent the money to the details Tyler provided him. Don thinks he is trying to deceive him. However, he informs Hutton that it's either he's lying or they have both been duped. Tyler visits Rosalia with a bright smile on his face. He wants to know if she got the money he sent to her. Later that night, they walk down the path from her house with their arms wrapped together. He tries to convince her to leave Piano and see other parts of the world with him, but this just makes her think he wants to buy her with his money. She informs him that his money is now with the church and bids him a good night. He angrily walks over to the church to confirm for himself, and surprisingly, a hand grabs his shoulder upon entering the place. The priest gives him a chair to sit on and tries to explain why Tyler refuses to return to his home when he's not even being held by his abductors. The priest informs Tyler that he is under a spell and refuses Tyler's request for an exorcism. The reason being that it can only cast out evil, not the love spell which he is under. Tyler feels a bit creeped out, especially after hearing thunder. The priest brings out the bag of money Tyler had given to Rosalia. He informs him that Rosalia donated it to the poor. However, he wants Tyler to have it and do what he must, adding how he believes Tyler should not fool his heart, as love cannot be bought, nor can money break the spell. Tyler takes the bag of money and heads to Rosalia's house. He calls out her name from outside and apologizes for the misunderstanding, citing how he just wants to show her how much he cares about her. She refuses to entertain his plea to come out and talk. Heartbroken, he picks up the bag and returns to his residence. He gets back home. However, he can't sleep because of Cheto, who keeps calling Nuta's name while he is asleep. The cow is also whimpering. He's pissed off because he doesn't understand why Cheto is reacting that way to a cow, but then his gaze falls on the word Sarbalai, which is carved on the wood above their heads. It suddenly dawns on him that perhaps Nuta is more than just a cow. The following day, the entire village gathers as they wonder what the occasion is after hearing the bell ring continuously. The mayor soon arrives with a garland on his head and a rope holding Nuta in one hand. He gestures for Seto to hold the bottle of drink in his hand so he can make his announcement. He excitedly informs them that he is rich and shows them the bag of money with him. The villagers rejoice because this means their village will be rich as well. The mayor tells everyone that it's time to celebrate the festival of Sarbolai. Then he begins to throw money in the air. Rosalia, who is watching from her corridor, feels emotional and tries to control her tears. She takes a look at Tyler, who is quietly making his way out of the gathering. The mayor leads Seto to where Nuta is tied and hands over his cow to him. He places the garland on Seto's head. Immediately, Seto kisses his face in appreciation and thanks the old mayor. Later, Aldo confesses to Fidelia that he is not in a travel club. She is shocked to hear that he is a mafioso who does bad things. She admits she cannot love a man who lives a criminal life, but she urges him not to mention anything about his club to her Uncle Pio. The town bubbles with activities as the villagers collaborate to beautify their village. Rosalia arrives with 2 horses and a wagon filled with flowers and trumpeters. Tyler comes over to meet her and requests to have a conversation with her. After much persuasion, she grants him an audience and acknowledges what he did for the people of Piano. She also states that it's enough reason for her to forgive him for trying to buy her like a cow. At this point, she insists he is still under a spell and is unsure of what he is doing, so she asks him to go away. Tyler kicks an iron bucket nearby in frustration and yells, saying he is not crazy nor is he under any spell. Rosalia gets back to her restaurant angrily. Towards dusk, Rosalia's Nuna meets Tyler, who is staring into the mountains. She informs him that back in her days, the plain mountains were covered with cedar trees, which they called sarbalai. Back then, the villagers cut down the trees. The last tree was used to repair the cottage where Tyler and his abductors are living. That marked the beginning of the villagers' misfortunes. Tyler understands what she's getting at. He admits that he doesn't feel like his presence in the village is a mistake. He expresses his genuine feelings for Rosalia. Nuna tells him that he must break the spell and find a way to win over the love that's driving him mad. He has to wait for a sign, like a single kiss, which will tell him all he needs to know. That night, Dawn and Mr. Hutton meet up in Milan. They make arrangements and begin the journey to locate Tyler and Dawn's men. The villagers spend the night singing and dancing to their traditional songs. They are all wearing masks, crafted as the faces of different animals. They soon urge Rosalia to come give them a performance. Picking Tyler as her dance partner, she dances with elegance and enthusiasm. At the end of their dance, Rosalia kisses Tyler. He hears some chimes and knows for certain that the spell over him is broken. He excitedly lifts her and carries her on his shoulder. The priest wakes up to the sound of bells and cheers from outside his room. He finds the entire village and Tyler holding on to Rosalia. Tyler informs him that he's here to be married to Rosalia. Aldo, Bambo, and Seto indicate their interest in marrying their partners as well. The mayor exclaims, "It's the will of the heavens," or maybe not, given that Seto wants to marry a cow. While they are all talking, Mr. Hutton suddenly shows up. Don announces the reason why he is there and brings out his gun, demanding his money. Mr. Hutton is disappointed at Tyler, who he sent on a simple business trip, but ends up about to get married without his blessing. He pleads to his son to come back home to their business, but Tyler refuses. He chooses to be with Rosalia, who is willing to marry him. He is giving up everything he has for her sake. Don interrupts their romantic moment, requesting to have his men back. To his greatest surprise, his men refuse to go with him as well, because they want to get married and become better people. The mayor announces for the weddings to begin, and the people cheer loudly. Moments later, the priest joins the lovebirds in matrimony, right in the presence of numerous people. Nuna watches in admiration, seeing her girl happy with a man who truly loves her. The party begins, and everyone is having a really nice time. Gordon takes Don away because he is about to cause a scene due to being drunk. He walks over to his son and informs him that he won't give up on him. He bids the newlyweds goodnight and takes Don out with him. Who could have thought a man and his son's abductor could be friends? Cheto steps out of the party in search of Nuta. He finds his beloved cow with the male bull. Cheto feels heartbroken, but he understands Nuta. He turns to leave when a stray cat comes rubbing its body on his feet. He picks it up and takes the cat inside, requesting to be drink buddies with it. The next day comes, and Tyler brings out his box, followed by Rosalia. Everyone present bids them goodbye. Rosalia blows kisses to her Nuna before getting into the mayor's car. They drive off while the villagers are expressing their well wishes. Hutton and Don wake up in the cottage house where his son spent his first night in Piano. He walks over to the faucet to wash his face, and the moment his eyes fall on his reflection on the mirror, he becomes enchanted. He picks up the mirror, talks to himself, and heads out. Don wakes up to someone knocking on the door. He opens the door and beholds Nuna beautifully dressed up and wearing bright red lipstick. Don immediately becomes enchanted as he stares at her in awe. And so, the spell continues to work its magic.